As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
You know, we touched on this a little bit last week because it was one of the topics we sort of touched on. But I think this is interesting because now we have a statement from Sony, and this is Jim Ryan, who's an executive who's basically the boss of PlayStation at Sony, the boss of their gaming division. So the headline is Jim Ryan confirms Sony has more studio acquisitions planned. Exec argues not adopting Game Pass style strategy is allowing it to invest in M&A activity. So what they're saying here is Sony has more acquisitions planned beyond its recent buyouts of the Bungie and Haven. And they're saying that they absolutely, I'll read his quote directly here. He says, "We're in a really good place with PlayStation Studios and have been for the past few years. The critical success and the commercial success of the games that they've been making, that has given us permission to invest heavily in content creation." He added, "We're growing our studios organically and we're growing through acquisition. We acquired 5 studios during the course of 2021. We're in discussions with Bungie and we have more planned. This is getting us into a virtuous cycle where success begets success." He goes on to say he says, I'm quoting again directly, "I have to say, putting these games into a subscription service immediately upon their release would break this virtuous cycle and we wouldn't be able to invest in the way that we're currently able to. So we're not doing it. We're going to stick to the approach that we have and has served us well under many years now." So let me just paraphrase here and explain the key difference. Game Pass and Microsoft, what they're doing is they're buying studios, but they've committed to putting the games from those studios onto Game Pass day one. What PlayStation's boss has said is that we're buying studios, but we're absolutely not going to put them on our subscription service day one. Thoughts on the difference in strategy and who you guys think will be the winner, like when we look back on this 5 years from now, if you think there's one winner here?
That clarification definitely helps, because my first thought before we got further into this was, well, they are adopting a Game Pass model because they just announced one, but understanding now that there's a time period. But eventually, I think those titles will make it to Sony's subscription service, right? So in my mind, all that does is delay unit sales because I'm just going to wait for it to be cheaper because I'm not in a rush to play a Sony.
If your friends buy it and they're playing it, and you're waiting,
Elden Ring. Everyone's playing Elden Ring. I'm waiting for my Steam Deck. You know, I'm not in a rush to get it. So I maybe I'm more patient than others. It could bite them. Come back to bite them if people are like, cool, then I'll just play other games that are readily available, that are free to play, or that are play and earn, or what have you. And then once this goes on sale, I have a ton of friends that wait for Assassin's Creed games to go on sale before they play. So I get wanting to keep games exclusive and wanting to keep that value up, but I just think that the community at large is pushing back, saying we want a lower barrier, we want greater accessibility, and it's kind of tone deaf to not listen and lean into that.
Does anyone think that this will, because what Sony has said, and not in this interview, but what they've said in the past is these subscription services where you take a game and you put it on the subscription service the day it comes out, long term is going to hurt the quality of the games. Do you guys buy that argument? Ben, I don't know if do you believe that?
I mean, I think it can increase the volume of games, and so you could have more titles that are not quality games, but you're still going to have quality games that exist within the inventory. But you might just have more inventory.
I mean, I think part of their rationale is that if they put them on the subscription service, the games will make less money. And if they make less money, there's less budget to make them. And so we're going to end up in a world with just, sort of garbage games. Now, Microsoft's view is the more games they put on the subscription service day one, the more subscribers they'll get and the pie gets bigger, which, today that's not the case because there's still only 15 or 20 million, Game Pass subscribers. But
right.
I think we could all see a world where there's 50 or 100 million, I think.
Well, I feel like Game Pass was a really good land grab for Xbox because it did attract a lot of people to the Xbox.
Sure.
And we're kind of now in the next generation where, Sony is kind of they launched their own Game Pass style thing. And just with this particular studio, they seem to be kind of holding the reins in. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how it plays out. I also do understand them kind of not wanting to devalue titles and the quality of titles that are coming out of these really premier studios. I'm with Jimmy though. I don't have enough time when a game comes out. Really, I find to dig in. I mean, I did bite the bullet on Elden Ring, get it full price, and I'm getting murked in it left and right. But that was an exception to the rule as of late.
Let me just read these comments here. Ramby says, hi, hello, welcome. Matt says, my first thought is YouGov greater than the juice. Well, that's, hard to disagree. Matt says, my second thought is the same as my thought from last week. PlayStation won't succeed unless they're doing exclusive on their subscription service. Do you guys, that's a strong thought here, right? Basically, Matt, what you're saying is if they don't bring the games day one to their subscription service, the subscription service won't work. Do you guys think there's no value in the subscription service if they don't bring games there day one? Probably still have some subscribers, just not Game Pass scale, right?
Yeah. But I think the point there is that the exclusivity. So games that are exclusive, you can only get them if you are a subscriber to the service. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Interpreting that. But then that's a drag. As someone who doesn't, play all the time or only wants one title, that's like from a consumer's perspective, that could be bummer.
Kevin says PS4 dominated the content battle with Xbox. Now I can get most games on any system, God of War, Horizon, etc. Why does Sony think the same method would work under different circumstances? This is the problem with Game Pass, right? Like if Microsoft, well, I think the assumption we're making with all of these is that eventually the more studios that each side acquires, the more that these games will be exclusive, right? Like in some ways, this has been a little bit of a golden age where a lot of most games come out on both systems. But, we've talked about this before where there is a nuclear sort of war type of thing where both decide to go totally exclusive with all the studios that they control.
Right.
That changes the game, right? That if all of a sudden games aren't coming out consistently on both. Matt says that argument is BS. The Lee would be no Smash, Halo, Ratchet and Clank, Spider-Man, etc. The PlayStation without exclusives. Exclusives have driven a lot of it up until now, up until these subscription services. Kevin says maybe there's a different business model argument when you have a console only Sony versus console and PC. We can't overlook the 2v1. Yeah, and throw in, Xbox's cloud gaming thing, right, on phones. So probably more like a 3v1. PC, though, is relatively small from an install base perspective compared to console still. But you're right. That's a good point, guys. Do you think the three platforms essentially that Xbox and Microsoft are on gives them a distinct advantage over just PlayStation from a subscription service perspective? Jimmy?
I think increasingly it
Ben?
could.
Do we think this gets more amplified over time, right? Like that Microsoft will feed these three different ecosystems, or do you think 5 years down the line it's really about their hardware and their subscription service and everything else will be an afterthought? Because part of the value of the subscription service and owning that customer is selling them hardware, right?
Yeah,
Good point.
on the
Oh,
one
sorry.
hand, it's really feasible to say that having multiple modes of business obviously increases your subscriber base and the people that you can sell things to. On the other hand, the throw it all at the wall strategy could potentially be not as dominant as Sony's. We have one audience, and we're sticking to it, and we're catering to them type of strategy. I really feel like what's going like I don't know. I personally feel like what's going on here is there's two different methods here, and we're gonna see in 5 or 10 years down the road if it's the Game Pass model that works, and if Sony winds up putting everything on that, or if it's the selling exclusives and selling box copies works. I think we're at a pretty interesting fulcrum for seeing what happens next.
I think it's also PlayStation left the door open for them to pivot really quickly if they need to make a change.
Mhm.
Right. Absolutely.
They're sticking by their strategy today, to not rattle any cages or just to carry on so they can forecast the same way they have been. But if they decide a year down the line or more that they could do better, that seems like it's an easy pivot for them.
I think also Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard puts them in a stronger position as well, because even though they're going heavy on Game Pass, they're also acquiring studios, bigger studios, more recognizable with more titles. I mean, okay, cool. Sony acquired Bungie. We know on the show, and that's still up for debate. I think they overpaid. But so there's more coming. Cool. But what is that? Again, when we're comparing them side by side, like we're doing right now, I love that point, Ben, that there's opportunity for both sides, I think, to pivot depending on what is working and what isn't. But I still think on both ends of that spectrum, or rather in um, both areas, both paths that they can potentially go down, that Microsoft is still prime, or at least still better equipped to handle any variation there.